Good morning, children. Here I am with a new video of history, chapter number 8, Civilizing the Native, Educating the Nation. Children, bit by bit, the British conquered territories in India and took control over the resources of these territories. In addition to conquest, the British had another mission. This was to civilize the natives. The British believed that the people of India were uncivilized and it was the duty of the British to civilize them. Their ideas on education revolved around this theme. A linguist named Sir William Jones arrived in Calcutta in 1783. During his stay in India, he developed an interest in the Sanskrit language. He studied ancient Indian texts on different subjects and translated many of them. This he believed would serve two purposes. It would help the British know about Indian culture and it would help Indians understand their own history and rediscover their lost heritage. With the help of other like-minded people like Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Halhed, William Jones set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. He argued that Indian learning should be promoted in India. He wanted the government to set up institutions where ancient Indian texts could be taught. Sanskrit and Persian were to be the medium of instruction. The Governor-General at this time was Warren Hastings. He was a supporter of the Orientalist view. He helped to set up a madrasa in Calcutta to promote the study of Islamic law. In 1792, Jonathan Duncan set up the Banaras Sanskrit College. However, many Britishers did not agree with the Orientalist vision of learning. They believed that Indian learning was unscientific and often supported superstitions. James Mill was of the opinion that to be useful, education needed to be practical. So, he felt that Indians should be imparted Western learning. His views were supported by Lord Thomas Macaulay. He believed that Oriental learning was completely inferior to European learning. So, Western learning through the medium of English was the best option in India. It was with the Charter Act of 1813 that a humble beginning was made. It provided for a sum of ₹1 lakh to be spent annually on spreading education. But issues such as the nature of education, modern Western studies or traditional Indian learning, and the medium of instruction, English or vernacular, were still unresolved. These issues were resolved in 1835 when the English Education Act was passed. It was decided that the money allotted for education would be spent on promoting Western education through the medium of English. Thus, the government stopped supporting Oriental institutions. In 1854, the English East India Company sent an educational despatch to India. It came to be known as Wood's Despatch. It emphasized the value of Western learning. It outlined many such benefits of education. Western learning would enable Indians to realize the advantages of an expanding trade and commerce. Western learning would expose Indians to the Western way of learning and create in India a demand for British goods. Western learning would develop among Indians the skills required for administration and ensure a continuous supply of people to work at the lower levels of the government. It would thus save company from employing Englishmen who would have to be paid high salaries for working in India. Also, since these people would be dependent on the British for their job, they would be loyal to the British and would want British rule to continue. The Wood's Despatch set forth a comprehensive scheme of promoting education in India. It made a provision for spreading education from primary up to university level. Thus, schools, colleges, and universities were to be set up. In 1857, universities were set up in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. The medium of instruction at the primary level was to be vernaculars, while at the higher level it would be English. Education departments were to be set up in all the provinces. They were to supervise education and provide financial aid to the educational institution in the province. Children, this is all for today's session. We will discuss more about this chapter in the next video. Till then, goodbye. Now let us proceed further. Do you have any idea of how children were taught in pre-British times? Have you ever wondered whether they went to schools? And if there were schools, what happened to these under British rule? In the 1830s, William Adam, a Scottish missionary, toured the district of Bengal and Bihar. He had been asked by the company to report on the progress of education in vernacular schools. The report Adam produced is interesting. Adam found that there were over 1 lakh Pashalas in Bengal and Bihar. These were small institutions with no more than 20 students each. But the total number of children being taught in these Pashalas was considerable, over 20 lakh. These institutions were set up by wealthy people or the local community. At times, they were also started by a teacher. The system of education was flexible. Few things that you associate with schools today were present in the Pashalas at the time. There were no fixed fee, no printed books, no separate school building, no benches or chairs, no blackboards, no system of separate classes, no roll call registers, no system of separate classes, no annual examination, and no regular timetable. In some places, classes were held under a banyan tree. In other places, in the corner of a village shop or temple, or sometime at the Guru's home. Fee depended on the income of parents. The rich had to pay more than the poor. Teaching was oral, and the Guru decided what to teach in accordance with the needs of the students. Students were not separated out into different classes. All of them sat together in one place. The Guru interacted separately with groups of children with different levels of learning. Adam discovered that this flexible system was suited to the local needs. For example, classes were not held during harvest time. With rural children, often worked in the fields. The Pashala started once again when the crops had been cut and stored. This meant that even children of the peasant family could study. New routines, new rules. Up to the mid-19th century, the company was concerned primarily with higher education. So, it allowed the local Pashalas to function without much interference. After 1854, the company decided to improve the system of vernacular education. It felt that this could be done by introducing order within the system, imposing routine, establishing rules, ensuring regular inspections. Now, how was this to be done? What measure did the company undertake? The company appointed a number of government pundits, each in charge of looking after 4 to 5 schools. The task of the pandit was to visit the Pashalas and try to improve the standard of teaching. Each guru was asked to submit periodic reports and take classes according to the regular timetable. Teaching was now to be based on textbook and learning was to be tested through a system of annual examination. Students were asked to pay regular fee, attend regular classes, sit on fixed seats and obey the new rules of discipline. Pashalas which accepted the new rules were supported through government grants, and those who were unwilling to work within the new system received no government support. The agenda for a national education. British officials were not only the only people thinking about education in India. From the early 19th century, many thinkers from different parts of India began to talk of the need for a wider spread of education. Impressed with the developments in Europe, some Indians felt that Western education could help modernize India. They urged the British to open more schools, colleges and universities and spend more money on education. There were other Indians, however, who reacted against Western education. Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore were two such individuals. Mahatma Gandhi argued that colonial education created a sense of inferiority in the minds of Indians. It made them see Western civilization as superior and destroyed the pride they had in their own culture. There was a poison in this education, said Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi wanted an education that could help Indians recover their sense of dignity and self-respect. During the national movement, he urged students to leave educational institutions in order to show to the British that Indians were no longer willing to be enslaved. Mahatma Gandhi strongly felt that Indian languages ought to be the medium of teaching. Education in English crippled Indians, distanced them from their own social surrounding and made them strangers in their own lands. Speaking a foreign tongue, despising local culture, the English educated did not know how to relate to the masses. Western education, Mahatma Gandhi said, focused on reading and writing rather than oral knowledge. It valued textbook rather than lived experience and practical knowledge. He argued that education ought to develop a person's mind and soul. Many of you may have heard of Shantiniketan. Do you know why it was established and by whom? Yes, Rabindranath Tagore started the institution in 1901. As a child, Tagore hated going to school. He found it suffocating and oppressive. The school appeared like a prison, for he could never do what he felt like doing. So while other children listened to the teacher, Tagore's mind would wander away. The experience of his school days in Calcutta shaped Tagore's idea of education. On growing up, he wanted to set up a school where the children was happy, where she could be free and creative, where she was able to explore her own thoughts and desires. Tagore felt that childhood ought to be the time of self-learning outside the rigid and restricting discipline of the schooling system set up by the British. Teachers had to be imaginative, understand the child, and help the child to develop her curiosity. According to Tagore, the existing school killed the natural desire of the child to be creative, her sense of wonder. Tagore was of the view that creative learning could be encouraged only within a natural environment. So, he chose to set up a school 100 kilometers away from Calcutta in a rural setting. He saw it as an abode of peace, that is Shantiniketan, where living in harmony with nature, children could cultivate their natural creativity. In many senses, Tagore and Mahatma Gandhi thought about education in similar ways. There were, however, differences too. Gandhiji was highly critical of Western civilization and its worship of machines and technology, whereas Tagore wanted to combine elements of modern Western civilization with what he saw as the best within Indian tradition. Many individuals and thinkers were thus thinking about the way a national education system could be fashioned. Some wanted changes within the system set up by the British and felt that the system could be extended so as to include wider sections of people. Others urged that alternative systems be created so that people were educated into a culture that was truly national. Now, who was to define what was truly national? The debate about what this national education ought to be continued till after independence. So children, this is the end of the chapter. We will be coming soon with a new video. Till then, goodbye and thank you.